Hypha, the big picture. So that's really what we want to discuss with you today or present to you today. We have been, as I was saying, working for the last 4 years to create this technology, but not only the technology. What we want to do is really to create impact, create the conditions, if you like, be the enabler for ecosystems, for organizations who want to collaborate and cooperate to be part of this network that we are creating. So that's much more than just the technology, but our focus is really on making sure that this framework, can work for a large number of projects around the world. So what we are looking at, and our focus is the pantheon of wicked problems, right? So we are in a world that is troubled, of course, you're all aware of that. And we are putting our focus on these key problems that we see in the world, right? The climate change, people struggle, land degradation, ecosystem collapse. And we wanted to create, a solution that could work for these different use cases, different purposes, so that we can, at large scale, contribute to solve these wicked problems. Joachim, do you want to comment this slide? And
totally.
Okay.
Yes, Of course. I mean, if you look at the internet, right, every 20 years or so, some magic is happening there, right? 40 years ago, Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web, right? 20 years ago, we went to Web 2, which is a commercial, centralized web, extracting our data with these big players, right? Now we're shifting back, I think, into this Web 3 space that is a much more decentralized web, right? What to me is fascinating is that I think each time you get into this paradigm shifts, you increase the size and participation of the web, right? You think 2.0 was big, right, with Google and Facebook and so, but you haven't seen, I think, what's coming with Web 3. We now decentralize all of these technologies and enable them, giving them the data back, really, right? And creating these entirely new spaces, new forms of cooperation, new forms of coordination, new forms of creating organizations in general. So for me, fascinating space, and see what is going to rise out of this. Back to you. Oh, I like that one too. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure. You can continue. I will take
So there's this phrase coined by a friend of mine called the Tao moment. Jordan Hall said that. So we're embarking on this journey, right? We're getting these vessels ready, right? And creating this new form of human coordination. And it's really a shift, a shift from the left side, from what I call the legacy OS on this slide, right? And that was a legacy OS that was necessary, right? It was corporations that were built for the industrial age, right? We created competitive markets, linear money and legal contracts, hierarchical corporations, right, and decentralized institutions. I think they got us where we are today, right? But we're still, stuck in sort of another iteration of the industrial age. If you call it the sort of the fourth iteration of that, we're stuck now with AI now being commercialized and being, again, extracting our data and our very, participation in these networks. Shifting to the right, this is where we want to create this DAO operating system, right? DAO is really meant built for the information age. And that's just a placeholder. You can call it knowledge age, you can call it network age, you put your name in there, but it's a different paradigm, right? It's about living ecosystems, about circular value flows, right? It's about agreements, right? On-chain agreements. You don't need lawyers in that space any longer, right? You really don't need banks in this space any longer, unless you need to anchor down, right? Meaning you have some contracts that you need to set up because you need a legal representation in the country. You can do this, but that's kind of optional, right? The main focus is inside these spaces where you do create these agreements, right? And you decentralize your organizations and your networks and get into these cooperative networks, right? That's a whole new paradigm shift. I don't think anybody really understands yet what is coming. That is an enormous change in history. Again, every 20 years or so we see that, and we're just at the beginning of this, where we see these new interfaces, these new opportunities coming out of this whole new space. All right, good. So what we've done so far with DAO, with the Hypha DAO, right, is we created the DAO for what we call a core team or nucleus, right? So these are the basic principles of getting organized, right, and figuring out where the others and what are they doing in these spaces, right? And what we've done recently is created a process called the DAO activation, because you can't just give software out to people and then expect everything is fine. You need to do a lot more. You need to sort of activate people. You need to define what is actually necessary to build an organization from scratch, right? Because you come here for a purpose, right? This is a much more action and goal-oriented space, and you want to ensure that all of these features are enabled and you can actually use them and then put them aside, right? Again, this is about the human at the center. At some point we call it the DAO, the DHO, which stands for decentralized human organization, right? For me, this is not about technology, it's about bringing people into the heart of it, right? To say they are making the decisions. This is not an algorithmic space where these decisions are automatic. This is not sort of a distrusted space. This is a trusted space. This is a space where we come together, I get to know the others, and we're making these decisions together, right? The fact that it's happening on the blockchain is just secondary. It's necessary though, because we do need to record these decisions, right? We do need to make sure they are immutable. They're there forever. They're transparent. People can actually see what happened and go back in history and trace that back. So that is really critical. But the movement forward is based on human decision making and sense making in these spaces. Right? And then we get to sort of another layer here. It's the community activation. That's something we recently, thought through and are going to introduce inside the Hypha DAO, which has what we call a community donut. It's a community space around an organization that's now purpose-driven and has people who are working, at fundamental aspects of that. They come here, they get rewarded for that. They have a role, right? They have a commitment level. But there's a whole community around that. There could be 30 people in the nucleus, and there could be 1,000 people in the community donut, kind of in a supportive role, or it could be in a driving role too, right? That could say, we're the community, we're making decisions in that space, and the execution of that, the actual coordination, we don't want to get involved in that. That's the nucleus, right? They're doing that, they know what they're doing, right? And they have the right tool sets to do that. So that's community activation. But that doesn't stop there. It goes further into what we call the ecosystem activation. This is where it gets really interesting, right? This is when you get to see these DAOs now communicating and coordinating and exchanging value and knowledge with each other, right? So this whole DAO to DAO connection space is a whole new sort of level up to say, what can we do with thousands of DAOs out there that are starting to coordinate their efforts and starting to work together on solving these, as Alex mentioned, these wicked problems that we see out there, right? And then yet from there, another shift, right? So getting into these thriving networks, if you connect all of these nodes, hundreds, if not thousands of nodes together, you get into a territory that what we call here civilizational shifts. This is when you change the minds. This is when you change the whole, planetary scale of our projects, our movements, our communities around the world. And we think we have that platform, it's because of Web3, it's because we have the mindset, we have the urgency that's out there, and we have the sense of we got to work on this together. This isn't about island solutions any longer, right? This isn't about you against me any longer. This isn't about competition any longer. This is about you and us really working together and solving these problems. So that's the big picture. That's the pathway we see that we want to enable through our platform.